So we're here, final 21 days. Maybe it's me, so I want a gut check on this. But I feel like she's desperate. Kamala Harris, that is. She last night started talking about Trump being unhinged, and she's now saying, I'll go on Joe Rogan. It's sort of like they're acknowledging we'll throw everything against the wall. We've got to figure out what will stick because nothing else has.
Well, I think if you were in her shoes and you had magically appeared as the nominee without doing anything, and here you are, either at the beginning of a great future career or being a person who blew it, I think the tension would get to you. And I think in her case, she has this huge problem in that all of her advisors think she has to go out and perform. And unless we're totally misinformed, she can't perform. I mean, putting her on Joe Rogan, even putting her on Brett Baer, is a high risk opportunity. You know, when you watched last Saturday Night Live, and you watched the degree to which they were ridiculing her, that's a really bad sign if you're a liberal Democrat.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if you're getting mocked by The View and Saturday Night Live, you've got a problem. But the question I would have for you is someone who kind of oversaw a lot of House Republicans and their efforts. If someone came to you 21 days out and said, Mr. Speaker, things aren't working, I'm just going to throw everything at the wall, do you go, you got nothing else to lose, you might as well? Or do you try to install some level of discipline and strategy? I mean, what's the advice that you give right now? Because I feel like she's saying, I don't care anymore. We just got to do something.
Well, I think you're conflating two different things. One is her schedule, and the other is her message. The schedule is clearly a function of panic. I mean, you don't start talking about going on Joe Rogan as a liberal Democrat unless you're like just bananas. Her deeper, and if somebody came to me, and this has happened obviously, if somebody came to me, I'd say, all right, tell me your three best winning arguments. Stick to them. And stick to them all day, every day. Haley Barbour used to say, about the time you can't stand saying it, the average voter is starting to hear it. And so she's got to figure out, you know, this happened to me. I'd lost twice. My third race was very complicated. And on Labor Day, after 5 years of campaigning, I was behind a multimillionaire Democrat state senator, 51-37. And my consultant came in, Bob Weed, and said, we have two issues that'll beat her. And we have just enough money to run these two issues. We don't have the money to run more than two. And you got to decide. After 5 years, are you willing to gamble your future on being very disciplined, sticking to two issues? And your job is to be nice. And we have ads that will basically take her apart. And then your job is to be pleasant with the press because she'll go crazy. I spent the last 6 weeks of the campaign a very calm, very disciplined approach. Debated her one time, stuck to exactly the same issues. She actually attacked me and said that my ads were political pornography. And the press, of course, came running over gleefully and said, what do you think of that? And I said, well, since the ads are about her record, I've never before heard a candidate describe her record as pornographic, but we'd have to go ask her why does she think her record is pornographic. I mean, it was that sort of thing, but it required, and I ended up, by the way, going from down 51-37 to winning 54-46. So I would start by saying, tell me what you think your three winning issues are. I think they have to be three to avoid boredom. I don't think they can be more than three, because even at the presidential level, you can't communicate more than three issues in the last 3 weeks of the campaign. And I'd be very curious, other than abortion, if they think they have any issue that works for them.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, is that I feel like that's why I used the word desperate a moment ago, because I feel like they've tried the economy, they've tried policies. The other day she started talking about medical records, and I'm like, are you really want to go there? You guys were complicit in covering up Joe Biden, and now you want to talk about medical records? So last night it was he's unhinged. I feel like, to your point, find something that works. They have a ton of money. They have a ton of data and a ton of analytics. They've got to know that something moves the needle. And this morning on the morning meeting that we host, with Mark Halpert and Dan Turntine, we were questioning, is this the new message? And I said, well, look, we can need 72 hours. Is this the message of the day, or is this the message they're going to stick with? But I can't, for the life of me, as someone on the other side, tell someone, what is it Kamala Harris is campaigning on? Is she saying she can make things better, that she's smarter, that she's got a new way, policy-wise, that Trump's unhinged, that he's a threat to democracy? So, every day I feel like they're auditioning a new message. Do you have any sense of what it is they're trying to get through? And I get we're not in the business of helping them, but I don't know what her message is.
Look, I mean, let's start with part one. They clearly had decided from day one that they wanted the issue to be Donald Trump as a person. So they have been consistently, whether it's talking about January 6th or it's talking about his personality, you name it, they have gone after him as a person over and over and over. Now, the Trump people, to their credit, have mostly gone after her on issues. I mean, their thematic basically is that she's weak, liberal, and dangerous, and that really relates back to being a left-winger. And they understand that the three key issues, from their perspective, are in the economy and particularly inflation, the border and the criminal gangs, and then crime. And that on those three issues, they win by a big margin. So at a level of discipline we hadn't seen there for a while, Trump's been pretty good the last couple of weeks, sticking with the things that work for him. Meanwhile, I think the big problem for her is that she's inherently funny, and I mean funny in the sense of weird. And I think last night's contribution was talking, which I still don't understand, was answering a question by talking about the stars in the sky and the constellations they make, and how if you rethink it, the constellations can become different.
There's this whole, I talked with somebody once who said, if you just look at where the stars are in the sky, don't look at them as just random things. If you just look at them as points, look at the constellation, what does it show you? So you just outlined it, Roland. What does it show you?
I mean, I'm watching this thing thinking, where is she going? And I think she is thinking, where am I going? It's just weird. I mean, every other day you get sort of, so somebody pointed out, it may have been Jesse Waters, did this thing about what was her word of the day. And I think the word of the day that yesterday was safe. And he had this answer by her, which used safe like 5 times. And when you are easy to ridicule and caricature, you carry a huge burden, and you'd better find an issue or a topic so powerful that people will overlook the fact that you're weird. And they haven't found that. I mean, I think they objectively can't figure out, other than abortion, they cannot figure out what to hit Trump on.
All right, guys, I hate to interrupt this amazing conversation with Newt Gingrich, but tell me, if you're the kind of person that kicks off every morning with coffee, I've got the answer for you. No more drinking coffee and supporting woke ideology corporations. Nope. This sponsor of our show, Wired to Fish, is my new go-to. These guys have amazing, amazing coffee. This is Arabica beans sourced from Guatemala and Mexico. But here's the best part. Wired to Fish gives back to causes that are both faith-based and clean water focused. This is the kind of stuff that we can feel good about supporting when we want to have great coffee and know that it's consistent with our values. If you guys are coffee drinkers and you like a good cup of coffee in the morning, then try Wire to Fish. These guys have got it down because it's a company that's got a great product, but also supports great causes that are near and dear to me and to my heart. So go to Wired to Fish, which is Wired, the number 2, wired2fishcoffee.com, and use code WeCare for 15% off your first order. Wired2fish.com. Use code WeCare for 15% off. All right, back to the conversation. I also think that there's a degree, and you mentioned the 3 issues that Trump's campaigned on, and I get you can't get too many or it overwhelms people's sensory overload here. But But I feel like there's an authenticity issue with both her and Walz. Walz tries to go hunting this weekend. He claims that he's a hunter that always had a gun in the car, and yet he couldn't load the gun. And I think it showed, right? On the video, everybody who ever has hunted was like, dude, this is pathetic. She doesn't come off as authentic. She comes off as, she has an accent for every group that she meets with. I do believe that voters who were willing to give her a chance because they didn't know her, they didn't know anything about her, were willing to give her a chance. But there's a degree of they're not authentic. They're not who they say they were. They'll flip-flop. They'll be who you are. Is that worth pursuing, or is it, hey, you've got bigger fish to fry issue-wise?
Well, I mean, I don't think Trump has to do it. I think the media is doing it. The public is doing it. I have several friends who send me random TV commercials that are made by people that just show up. I mean, we live in an age of extraordinarily diffused creativity where people have tools, as you know, they're off the shelf, available, downloadable. And so you have a country talking to itself. And it's a little bit like what happened to Jerry Ford. Jerry Ford had been a very good football player on a very successful University of Michigan team. It became a thematic that he was clumsy. And Chevy Chase made his career in part by stumbling around as Jerry Ford on Saturday Night Live. Now, the fact is, Ford wasn't particularly clumsy. He was a very good athlete. But once it set in, it was just one more piece of weakening Ford in the general election. I think that Kamala's problem is that it's a little bit like the other night when they had the Saturday Night Live skit, and they asked the question, and she immediately says, well, you do know, and I think, by the way, that the actress who plays her is a genius.
Maya Rudolph.
And she was a genius in Bridesmaids, so I'm totally for her. But anyway, which, by the way, was the movie I used for debate prep before the first Fox debate in 2012. But
by the way, that's going to go down as like Gingrich trivia question. What was the movie that Newt Gingrich used before? I would have never guessed that one.
Well, so Clifton and I just stayed in our room and we drank Diet Coke and watched Bridesmaids. Because I think the most important thing about a debate is being relaxed. I mean, if you haven't already prepared, you had Romney down the hall with 12 binders to read. If you haven't already prepared, you shouldn't be on the stage, is my theory of life.
Yep.
Which is also the Trump theory, which is why trying to prepare him for a debate is an oxymoron. I mean, he spends 24 hours a day preparing for a debate. He just hopes one will show up. But when you watched the other night, though, she gets asked this question. I think they're playing one of the TV games.
Family
She
Feud.
gets asked a question, and she starts by saying, "Well, I was raised in a middle class neighborhood, and she goes off the whole thing." Well, the fact that that's now a thing is not good. I mean, it's the sort of thing that makes you shrug her off. And then when she tries to say something serious, you're remembering this is a person who talks in weird ways that don't make any sense. And I think it dramatically undercuts her candidacy.
Yeah, well, the narrative is set in. I want to ask you about her constituencies, because it blows my mind that she's on Charlemagne the God tonight. He's a big radio host on iHeart, huge audience with the Black community. She's now talking about giving Black men $1 million small business loans forgivable up to $20,000, providing training and mentorship programs, focusing on health issues that disproportionately affect Black men. I mean, I feel like if you're 21 days out and you have a problem with this constituency that is core to every Democrat, and you yourself are Black, that's a problem.
Well, Black and I think South Asian. I mean, let's be fair. But I have two thoughts about this. I'm actually writing a piece about Barack Obama as a racist, because his comments the other night were pure racism, where he's lecturing young Black men that they have an obligation to be for her. Why do they have an obligation to be for her? Because she's Black. Well, that is a straight out.
That's very Biden, right? You ain't Black if you're voting for me.
That's right. And of course, in Obama's case, it was lovely of him to leave his 8-bedroom mansion and briefly go to Pittsburgh long enough to lecture people before going back to an island, by the way, whose black population is 3%. And the average home is worth almost $1 million. So I think it's $942,000 on the average home. His compound, of course, is vastly bigger and more expensive. But what I've asked Rachel Peterson, who does just an amazing job of research for me, to track down the exact statements by Harris, because if she's talking about a $20,000 forgivable loan, which of course means it's just a gift.
Right.
It's not a loan at all. If she's talking about that only for black men as part of her black male appeal, I mean, that's a purely racist program. And one would think that it would be illegal in the United States to have a purely racist program. Furthermore, how black do you have to be to qualify? This is the whole reparations problem.
Right.
And how do we know it won't end up in fraud? I mean, you go down.
Well, also, I mean, just on a policy standpoint, it's stupid too. You're just going to everyone will then adjust their cost to assume that you can afford another 20 grand. I mean, policy-wise, just on its face, it's a dumb policy.
Well, it also means everybody in their who's semi-competent is going to open up a website, claim they're a business, and ask for the 20 grand.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's the sort of thing that happens when you have really clever, smart people who've never done anything in the real world. And they're sitting in a room and they're saying, what can we offer them to get them excited? Somebody says, I know, we can give them all $20,000. Well, I mean, it's, they used to try to buy your vote like, what, $5, or they used to give you a bottle of bourbon. I mean, in the great age of American machine politics, there were rewards. But the idea you just randomly say, hi, everybody who'd like $20,000, please vote for me, is pretty close to insane.
Do you think that this issue of young black men in particular, even young black Hispanics, is this a candidate phenomena, right? So she's bad, Trump is somewhat appealing, or is this a cultural and ideological shift that Republicans will benefit from post-Trump, right? So there's a difference between them shifting and will benefit from it, and this being a one election phenomena because she's horrible and Trump's somewhat appealing.
Well, I think the high watermark of black support for a Democratic nominee was Barack Obama.
Yeah.
It dropped significantly, I think almost 20 points when Hillary became the nominee. It dropped again, not as much, but it dropped again from Hillary's numbers when Biden became the nominee. And it's now dropped again. I think the practical reason is simple. You raise people's cost of living. They go to the grocery store and they're reminded every week that you failed. They go buy gasoline and reminded you failed. They live in a neighborhood that is dangerous and people get shot. They realize that there are millions and millions of illegal immigrants who are now both in some cases physically dangerous and in other cases are going to take your job. And the party that's doing all that to you is saying, well, you should blindly vote for us anyway. And I think the thing that's fascinating is younger black males, not all of them, but a significant minority, now genuinely identify with Trump.
How to vote?
Yeah.
Who you voting for?
Trump.
Come on, bro. Harris does backwards, bro.
What?
Harris.
Man, we not voting for that, man. We voted for Trump, man.
And I think the break point was when they took the picture of him at the Fulton County Courthouse. And I know that there are black barbershops that have that picture up on the wall. And it was sort of like, the man is after him too. We have something in common. We both have trouble with the police. And all of a sudden, Trump became, plus he's such an alpha male that if you're a young guy who's sick of being bullied by women, and that's the other problem that Obama was getting into, is that he was making an argument that you really shouldn't vote against a woman because women have done all these things for you. Well, as a general rule, 23-year-old males of any background, no matter what their race, aren't particularly big on being told that they should be grateful to and subservient to females. It's a tread into dangerous water. It's sort of a biological thing.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.